let's get real. Israel was first of all formed as a nation to give the Jews a homeland. That's why. And it was formed out of collective guilt over the aftermath of World War II and the genocide of the Jewish people. Okay? That was real. It really happened, and 8 million Jews were liquidated by the Nazis during World War II. Here's the sad, sick part about history that most people don't realize. The Allies were aware of what was happening to the Jews from the very beginning of World War II, because it began in 1938 on a night that is seared into the Jewish collective memory called Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass in Germany. That began the expulsion and extermination of the Jewish people, not only in Germany, but in every other conquered country during the Nazi campaign. The Allies knew from day one what was going on, and they looked the other way. Why in history, we will never be able to understand. Maybe it's because of the long-standing, centuries-old hatred of Jews by the Christians, who always blamed the Jews for what? Oh right, contributing to the death of Christ, which would explain the pogroms, the mass murder of Jews throughout history. This has gone on. If you do look into history, you'll realize the Jews have been persecuted people for 2,000 years since the advent of Christianity. Okay? The Old Testament was only included in the current version, and there isn't a current version of the Bible. The most recent is the King James Edition, which is complete nonsensical bullshit that only radical Christians actually believe. Anybody with any kind of intellect whatsoever reads the Bible for about a half an hour and says this is the most insane piece of literature ever foisted on humanity. Second only to the Torah, and third behind Islam and the Quran. Yeah, that means I just probably got myself in the crosshairs of the Islamic Republic. Numerous ones. Going back to this was all brought up for me though because of the absurd comments made by Idiot Orange, Agent Orange, standing next to Netanyahu with a permanent smirk attached to his face when Donald Trump said we were going to take over Gaza and turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. Never mind the 2 million Palestinians that are desperately trying to figure out how to rebuild a country devastated beyond imagination by the Israelis. Do not get me wrong here. What Hamas did on October 6th, a date that will live in infamy in the Israeli psyche for eons, was horrific, appalling, and just beyond imagination. And yet, the slaughter, and let's be honest, the slaughter of over 50,000 conservative estimates of Palestinians, 40% which are women and children, and the complete leveling, decimation of a country is not equal to the act of October 6th. To call it overkill would be a simplification. This is wrong, horrific, and genocidal. And don't be fooled by the Israeli propaganda. This was a deliberate attempt to eradicate a people and to seize more territory. Israel has behaved like an empire since its inception. Its constant need to grab more land, from the Golan Heights to the borders of Syria, to pieces of Egypt, Jordan, on and on. Israel has grown exponentially, year by year, through conquest and violent means. And why is the United States so desperately enthralled to Israel? Well, my best guess is it's a collective conscious remembrance of guilt. The Israelis have portrayed themselves as victims for 80 years. And yes, they were. But they're not victims anymore. They have become what they despise, which is what empire does. And it's horrific and appalling. And the reason why we continue to support them, $200 billion in weapons were given to Israel over the course of the last year and a half. And before, those American weapons were used to level Gaza. Those were American weapons. Those weren't Israeli weapons. They don't fly Israeli aircraft or shoot Israeli missiles. They shoot ours. Here's a news flash for everybody. Islam is now growing to every corner of the world. The Islamic religion. There are 2 billion Islamic adherents. They outnumber Christians 4 to 1. And they blame us, and rightfully so. And so it begs the question, because when Trump came out and said something so stupid as to inflame the entire Islamic Islamic world, sorry, gotta keep my mind straight here, to inflame the entire Islamic world by just casually saying, we're gonna take over Gaza. Do you have any idea of what the implications of that really are? The great American Satan. That is how we're viewed by the Islamic world. And why wouldn't we be? How many crusades have we waged, the United States of America, in our brief little timeline history, our little pencil-thin history, in the history of man? The greatest empire ever? Oh, really? $36 trillion in debt empire? You wonder why? You wonder why we are subject to terrorist attack? It's because that's how we're seen. And specifically, we're seen that way for our unilateral, unblinking, unwavering support of Israel. There was a senator that said just 2 days ago that Israel is our most important ally. What a fucking joke. That's a laugh. Really? More important than England, France, all of NATO? They're our most important ally? Why? Why? Is it because of the goods and services they export to us? No. Foods? No. Oil? Natural gas? No. They have none of those things. People? No. What does our quote-unquote most important ally actually benefit the United States? What do we get from Israel? Other than a lot of money for our arms industry. That's fucking it, folks. Get real. That's it. That's all we get. Okay? Israel is far and away our biggest ally liability. They are our biggest liability in the world. And yet we blindly support them. And do you know why we blindly support them? Well, let me tell you why. Israel has the most powerful lobbying group in the United States. Israel spends more money That means pays our politicians directly into their pockets. More money than any other lobbying group in the United States. More money than oil and gas. More money than the arms industry. More money than the pharmaceutical industry. More money than the health industry combined. Why do we blindly allow them to do what they do? Because they pay us. And they don't pay you and me, the average citizen. We suffer the consequences of this bought, blind allegiance. And when the next terrorist attack happens on U.S. soil, we're only going to have one place to look. And the fact that Donald Trump just did what he did is a massive slap in the face to when our supposed best ally in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, comes out and unilaterally shuts down this proposal in no uncertain terms as absolute lunacy, then you might want to fucking listen. And the idea of involuntarily deporting 2 million people from their homeland is genocide. And if you're under any confusion here, which some of you probably will be, why don't you go back to the history of the United States and the Native Americans who were displaced, whose land was stolen, whose people were murdered through warfare and biological warfare, i.e. smallpox, measles, whooping cough, you fucking name it. All European diseases voluntarily introduced to the native populations so we could steal their land. Israel isn't trying anything new. They're just copying the blueprint, the roadmap that the United States has followed since its inception, going all the way back to the first load of criminals that arrived in a boat in Plymouth. This is lunacy. And it's about time that somebody called out Israel for what it is. This is a Zionist, imperialistic, militant country. No ands, ifs, or buts. They are no benefit to our country at all. And Israel might want to look in the mirror and say, maybe if we quit killing Muslims, stealing their land, and murdering their children, we wouldn't be constantly in a state of conflict. Food for fucking thought, huh?